we're getting more information. It was I think it's fair to say, Judy, it was a somber weekend in Surfside, north of Miami Beach, as the rescue efforts for this collapsed condo continued. Sadly, no survivors being pulled from the rubble.
But they have pulled some more bodies. There were up to 9 dead now, 152 unaccounted for. And they did allow family to come to the site, which was nice because, you know, they just need closure, too. I mean, I think everyone's at this point thinking the same thing, that it's going to become a recovery operation very soon, if not today. I know that this was a big Jewish community, and they have some, their cultural issues with when you die, how quickly you have to be buried, that sort of thing. Okay. And people just wanted to come to the site, and so that was allowed this weekend.
Heartbreaking story.
Oh my gosh!
I saw
tragic.
one woman, her grandmother, 6th floor condo. They've been calling. Goes right to voicemail. Can't find grandma. And so when we talk about the missing or unaccounted for, after now, I mean, if they would have been down the street at the supermarket, we would have found them.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, if they had gone somewhere else. Yeah.
So what the total numbers are, we're not sure. But why? What happened? There is something to be said for this, and trying to understand more about it. Joining us right now is Rob Crain, and Rob is a personal injury attorney. Rob, first off, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
So I know that already people have been doing a lot of research, taking a look at this specific building, this property, and trying to get to, were there any signs in its history that it was in any way, shape, or form unsafe? What have you seen?
Well, you're starting to see lots of reports of engineering studies that were done in the years preceding this collapse. And first of all, my thoughts and prayers and just
Absolutely.
Heartfelt wishes. It sounds like 134 of those missing people are now confirmed to be within the structure at the time of the collapse. So that's very distressing.
Yeah.
But to your question, in 2018, there was an engineering report that was done that noted significant spalling, which is just collection of cracking throughout the building that called for action to be taken in a timely manner. The engineering group that did that report is now saying, well, that didn't show that it was imminent, that something like this was going to happen. But as early as 3 years ago, you had a report indicating as such. And as you probably have also noted, there's a engineering study that was underway. Yeah. Because this building is 40 years plus old, and Miami-Dade County code requires that within a few years following a 40th anniversary of a building, it has to go through a recertification process. So it was under that process at the time of this collapse.
But at no time, during any of those reports or when they were submitted, did anyone say, we need to get this building evacuated? It's that dangerous. At no time was that ever an issue, right?
No, there doesn't appear to be any reports as of yet. But that being said, there are, I believe there's a professor, I want to say Duke, but at the Eastern Seaboard, who has been studying buildings that are built on barrier islands, such as South Beach. And has been calling for a relook at why are we building on barrier islands, and by their very nature are shifting in nature over time. And he is being now widely quoted in numerous articles about, hey, we need to relook at whether it's a good idea to have these kinds of structures on these types of islands that have this kind of historical pattern of shifting. There's also been reports about how, this particular portion of the island had been underwater for much of its history and time, and that it may not have been stable ground. There's been reports that the waterproofing in this building had not been operating properly at a lower level, which that's significant if you're talking about water getting in, especially with salt air. There are a lot of questions risen, and I'll say this. I hope this is a wake-up call for all of us. Standards in building construction have not always been uniform. And so at the time this building was built back in around 1981-ish, I don't know that we were building buildings the way we needed to be at that time. So there's a lot to be looked at. This needs to be not just a blip on our media. it needs to be a hard study for buildings across this country.
We're talking to Rob Crain, a personal injury attorney, also certainly knowledgeable about this when it comes to these types of issues. Because I guess, Rob, here's the thing. I say it nicely. I think our trust in things like government is nearing all-time lows. If you live in one of these buildings, I live in a high-rise building. I live on the 23rd floor of a building. Granted, I don't live on a beach, but think about the other people there in the Miami Beach area. That stretch of Collins, the A1A, I mean, I wouldn't know how to guess how many, but there's hundreds of high-rise buildings all along there. If you're living in there, how do you know that your building is safe? Who are you supposed to rely upon? Where does personal responsibility? Is there anything you can do?
Well, many of these buildings have associations, whether they're homeowner association type associations, but as a collective group, there needs to be calls for production of any engineering studies that have occurred recently on your building. If there aren't any or there's not satisfactory results, you need to be calling and asking for your building management to show what their plan is in regards to having engineering review of the building. This particular corridor, as you mentioned, is very populated with buildings in that 40-year time frame.
Yeah.
This is not the only building that was built during that time. And so, your point's a broader question, buildings across the country, but we've got to take a real fast, hard look at a lot of these buildings that were built at the same time, in the same area, with the same potential geographical issues. And across the country, as you noted, if you're in a high-rise building, I would want to make sure through your collective associations and groups that engineering studies are being done to ensure the integrity of your building.
Rob, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate your expertise.